What's good, YouTube? In today's video, as you can tell, I'm running back another Warzone tier list. I know I dropped a few of these in the past and they all went crazy. I told you guys I would run another one when the Cold War guns got integrated, and I just never did it when the drop of the update. I had to test them out, see how they were, you know what I'm saying? They were glitched for a little bit. They're finally fixing some glitches with them, so I wanted to run it back, give you guys another tier list. I don't want a super long intro. I want to hop right into the tier list, but I will say a few of the guns I've used somewhat, not a ton. So I do want you guys in the comments below, let me know if you'd make any changes to my tier list by the end of the video, and just let me know overall what your tier list would be. So without further ado, let's hop straight into the tier list. Number 1, we have the JAK-12. The shotgun, actually most shotguns in the game now aren't really too competitive, so I'm gonna have to probably toss this gun down into B tier because it is still decent with like the Dragon's Breath and all that stuff, but it's definitely not viable compared to like the MP5, MAC-10, all that stuff. Next up is the Groza. This gun does ridiculous damage, but this is one of the guns I haven't tested too much. I don't have it fully maxed leveled up, but ground loot, all that stuff, it does a ton of damage, and I think it's definitely worthy of that B spot next to JAK-12. It's more viable than the JAK-12, and it does, like I said, it does a ton of damage, but it's definitely not meta or anything. Next up is the old reliable Modern Warfare M4A1. This gun still does a ton of damage, great time to kill, and all you have to do is control the recoil. My class setup is a banger with that, by the way. I recently dropped a video on that, so definitely go check that out if you have not already. But this gun is definitely worthy of the A tier. This gun can compete in any season. It always has competed, and it's definitely a top tier gun. Next up is the M13. This gun is known as the pea shooter. Like, sometimes it shreds, sometimes it doesn't, but overall it has zero recoil and it is a laser beam. It honestly could be A tier, but for the out of respect for the Groza, I'm gonna toss it down in B behind the Groza because I think I'd rather have the Groza low key. So that's definitely a B tier. Next up is the FR556, aka the FAMAS from Modern Warfare. This gun is dog. Like, this gun is terrible. Modern Warfare did terrible with burst guns. Like, Cold War has the AUG, M16, all that stuff. This gun is terrible. It's just really simply put. Like, this gun is not competitive, does no damage, it has no range, all that stuff. I'm gonna have to toss it down into D tier. It could be C because, like, okay, I'm gonna put it C only for the guns that are gonna go D tier. Just know, for the guns category of AR, it's just not competitive whatsoever. Next up is the Modern Warfare AK-47. The gun does a ton of damage. Just the recoil kicks a lot, but if you can control it, it's kind of a beam. I am gonna have to toss it down into C tier because I would rather run an M13 or Groza and all that stuff. But I think it is better than the FAMAS, so I'll toss it above that. The gun is definitely not competitive, but it is viable, so definitely run that. Next up is the FAL. If you guys have not seen the recent videos on this gun, apparently it's coming back, a silent buff or whatever. But this thing used to be meta not too long ago, like a season or two ago. It does a ton of damage. You can spam it, has good range, all that stuff, and it's better than all these B tiers, so I am gonna have to toss it up into A tier. Like, it does really good. It is a very, very, very good gun, and it can compete with the other stuff, so definitely give that a try. I will probably drop a video on that soon, so stay tuned for that, but the gun is ridiculous. Next up is the Scar from Modern Warfare. This gun is dog. Like I said, like I was saying for the FAMAS, like right here, it's just not viable. The mag size is what kills it, because overall the gun, like, the slow fire rate's okay, but the damage it puts out, all that stuff, the range, you can control the recoil, but overall the mag size just kills it. Like, it only has a 30 mag, I believe, is the highest. That's terrible. I think if it has a higher mag, it's competitive, but this gun is worse than the FAMAS, so I'm gonna have to throw it behind the FAMAS in C tier. It just doesn't compete with any of the good ARs like the AMAX, Kilo, all that stuff. I'd rather have an M13. Next up is the Odin. This gun is kind of dirty. Like, I've dropped a few videos on this. It has very slow fire rate, but the damage it outputs, the mag size is decent for the gun, since it's like, compared to the Scar, the mag size fits the Odin. You know, the Scar is like, it needs a bigger mag size. The Odin's okay with what it is. The damage is great. If you control the recoil, it's ridiculous. I'm gonna have to toss this B tier right behind the M13 above these ones, because it's actually pretty good. It's viable for sure. So definitely give that a try. Next up is the Kilo 141. If you guys didn't know, this was everyone's baby in Warzone. Everybody ran this not too long ago, right before the Cold War update. This was the gun, but apparently they nerfed it for some reason, and now it is terrible at range. Like, close to medium range, it will still hit so hard and it's still so good, but at range, it's just a pea shooter and does no damage. So just for, like, if they never nerfed it, it would be S tier because it is that gun. But with that slight nerf, it's still viable and close to medium. So I'm gonna have to toss it A tier because it's still super good, just not the top one anymore. You know what I'm saying? S tier is for those top tier guns. Next up is the Modern Warfare MP5. This gun is still ridiculous. If you guys didn't know, I recently just dropped a video like 2 or so videos ago, and this thing is insane still. Like, great mobility, great damage, good range, all that stuff. Definitely top tier SMG in the entire game. It competes with the MAC-10 for #1 spot. So this is an S tier gun. This is an S tier gun in Warzone right now. Definitely definitely still a viable gun, and you can still run that if you want. If you don't like a MAC-10, you don't like people running the MAC-10, run the MP5. Next up is the MP7. This is like the MP5 with slightly less damage, better fire rate, and more range. It's still super good, and I've actually seen a lot of people running it recently. Like, it's actually really good, so definitely give this a try if you have it. I'm gonna have to toss this in A tier, only because the MP5 is S tier, and it's not quite at that level, so it has to be an A tier SMG. Next up is the AUG from Modern Warfare, not the Burst from Cold War. This gun is pretty good. It does great damage, and it's like an SMG AR, sort of. Like, it's viable in both like circumstances, but I'd rather have an MP7 or MP5, so I'm gonna have to toss it down in a B tier, but I do believe it's better than most of these guns in here, so I'm gonna have to put it over the JAK-12. Next up is the P90. If you're comparing it to other SMGs like I'm doing, the AUG is better than this, and the MP7, like, this has to be either a really low tier B or a C tier. I personally don't like the P90 at all. It does really no damage, and it doesn't compete with any of these SMGs, so I'm gonna have to toss it into C tier. I'll put it above the FAMAS, you know, because the FAMAS is terrible. But the P90 is definitely not viable. The PP Bison. This gun is only good off floor loot in Superstore. This gun is terrible in every other circumstance. It's really just not good, and it's just not even close to a top tier gun in this game. It's gonna be C tier right here with the P90, but the P90 is better than the PP Bison. That gun is just not it. Next up is the Modern Warfare Uzi. This gun at one point was actually doing a ton of damage. It was probably the best floor loot gun at one point in Superstore and all that stuff. But now it's not floor loot. Nobody runs it, and it's just not even in the conversation of even being usable in Warzone, because it just compared to the MAC-10, MP5, MP7, really any secondary, it's just not there, you know what I'm saying? So comparing it to the PP Bison, I'd rather have the PP Bison. I'd rather have the P90. So this is gonna either be really, really low C tier or D tier, but out of the respect of what's gonna be in D tier and the Uzi, I'm gonna have to put it really low C tier. It's definitely just not. I'd rather have the Bison. I'm gonna actually put the Bison up. I'd rather have all of these over the Uzi, so just don't even run that in Warzone. Next up is the model shotgun from Warzone. Dragon's Breath, this could be somewhat good, but even still, with that slow pump that it does, and you still have to 2 or 3 shot someone, it's not viable whatsoever, because in that time you're gonna get absolutely melted by MP5 or MAC-10. I'd rather have multiple shotguns over it. So this gun is gonna be another low C tier. It's like the average guns in C tier where you're just not gonna use them because they're not good, because there's multiple shotguns better, there's multiple SMGs, all that stuff, so it's not viable. Do not run the model in Warzone. Next up is the R9 shotgun. This gun was the gun. Not even a season ago, like half a season ago. The Dragon's Breath R9 was different, and it probably still is probably the best shotgun, really close range. They nerfed the range and damage somewhat, but in their face, the R9 is still gonna like just 2 pump them, like a little doof, you know what I'm saying? So it's probably still better than the JAK-12, so I'm gonna put it in B tier right above it. It's not A tier or S tier anymore, but it's still probably one of the best shotguns in the game. Next up is the 725. This gun isn't very good. I've seen some people run it in Warzone, but it's just not good at all. Definitely don't run it in Warzone. It's not competitive whatsoever. So this is gonna have to go below the Model 680, but I wouldn't say it's D tier. Like, it's another average C tier type gun, really low C tier, probably really close to D tier, just not very usable. Next up is the Origin. I don't know why there's 2 of them, but the Origin is still probably better than the Model 725 and probably the JAK-12. It just doesn't do as much damage, so I'm gonna have to put it right behind that R9, but it's still definitely not one of the best guns in the game anymore. At one point it was meta, like you guys know, but it definitely is not viable like the #1 shotgun, so it's going to be right in B tier, right behind that R9. Again, I don't know why there's 2 of them. Next up is the M91. This LMG is actually really good. Like, it does a ton of damage. It's probably really one of the best floor loot guns you can have, but overall meta wise and like the state of the game wise, this gun is not competitive. Like, if you're running this and I'm running AMAX, I'm gunning you 9 times out of 10, you know what I'm saying? You might get that lucky kill, but this is probably going to be a B tier type gun, because of course it's better than the FAMAS and the SCAR and the AK, but I'd rather have an Odin. I'd rather have an M13. It's going to go low B tier. It's going to go low B tier. I know you guys can't see the end of the tiers, but I'm showing you guys what's going there. So low B tier, the gun's not very competitive. Next up is the PKM. This LMG is different. It has actually surprisingly good mobility, ADS speed, fire rate, range, all that stuff. Like, this gun is very good, great damage, all that stuff. It's better than M91. It's an A tier type gun. I'm telling you guys, I'm gonna drop a video on this gun soon, because it's always been good. It's never been a bad gun in Warzone, so definitely give that a try if you guys have not already. Next up is the MG LMG. This gun is terrible. Some people tell me to use it in like my Twitch chat and my YouTube comments, but this gun is not very good at all. Okay, definitely don't run it if you there's no point to run this gun in Warzone. It's worse than the M91. I'd rather have an AK over it. It's gonna be very, very low C tier, right behind the SCAR. Okay, like, that gun is not very good at all. Do not run that in Warzone. Next up is the SA87. if you guys don't know this, I dropped a video on this not too long ago, maybe a month or so ago, right before the Cold War update. This gun is kind of different. It has really no recoil. It does good damage. It just has very bad mobility, ADS speed, all that stuff. But it's not as strong as the M91. So it's good, but it's not as good as the M91. So I'm going to put it in B tier right behind the M91. It's actually pretty solid. Next up is the EBR. I don't know why you would be running this gun in Warzone. Like it's like a watered down, terrible DMR. This gun sucks, okay? Like it's that simple. Slow fire rate. It has good damage, but it's terrible recoil, slow fire rate, mobility. It's just not good at all. But it's definitely not D tier. Like you can still get kills with it, you know what I'm saying? So it's gonna be very, very low C tier, like possibly the last spot of C tier, because it's just not good. I don't know why people would be running this, but it's terrible. So don't run it in Warzone. Next up is the Kar98. This could be an S tier type sniper, because it is probably, you know, I'm going to put it in S tier because this is the best sniper you could be running in Warzone. Like it's great speed, mobility, ADS speed, damage, bullet drop, everything. It's the best sniper you could be running, especially for aggressive type snipers. You can quick scope with it. You can hit it from range, all that stuff. It is the best option at the sniper position, even though it's a marksman rifle. And you guys have probably seen a ton of streamers go crazy with this. It is the best option. So it's an S tier. It's really good. So run it if you guys have not already. Next up is the MK2 carbine. This gun is terrible. Like actually, it's bad. Like it might, like you could break armor and then shoot him again for a quick kill. And in my past tier list videos, I've disrespected this gun. People get mad at me for putting this so low, but I'm sorry to break it to you. If you're running this gun, you are just simply a bot, okay? It's that simple. It's terrible. It's terrible. Do not run this. I'm putting it in D tier. It's D tier. It's terrible. I'd rather have an EBR. Next up is the AX50. I'm tossing this into A tier. Only because like it has really good range, damage, and it's probably one of the top snipers, right behind like the Kar98 HDR. Actually, out of the Cold War snipers too, I'm gonna bump this down into B tier, high B tier, because there is a few Cold War snipers better than it, and it's not as good as the HDR and Kar98. So B tier sniper. The AX50 is not bad. It's personally not my favorite. I don't like it very much, but it's definitely B tier. Next up is the Dragunov. This is terrible too. There's no reason to run the Dragunov. Please do not run the Dragunov. It's terrible. I'm putting it down in D tier with the MK2. You guys gotta understand that is my opinion. These two guns suck. If you guys are running these, I don't know what you're doing. There's no point to be going around Verdansk with these, okay? Do not run the Dragunov. Next up is the HDR. This is an A tier sniper. It has like infinite range, like no bullet drop. It has great damage. And it used to be probably the best sniper in the game. Like I used to run it instead of the Kar98. Now it is the Kar98. It's better in my opinion because the HDR is a little too slow. Like it's too campy, you know what I'm saying? But if you're like a slower paced player, definitely run the HDR. It does great. If you can hit your shots with it, it's kind of ridiculous. So definitely an A tier type sniper. Next up is the X16. If you guys know, shooting people out of the sky off spawn, this gun shoots nukes off spawn. Like it's kind of ridiculous. And you guys, I'm gonna put it C tier, but you guys gotta understand, like I'm not saying this gun is like specifically better than these two. I'm just saying like out of gun categories and stuff, out of pistols, it's one of the best pistols. So it's gonna go C tier. And honestly, just straight up, I do believe it's better than the MK2 carbine. The MK2 carbine sucks. It's simply put, okay? But the X16 shoots nukes off spawn. And as an akimbo pistol, this thing could probably shred people up close. So it's actually pretty viable. So definitely give those a try. Next up is the 1911. I'm not even going to talk too long about this. D tier. They suck. Do not run the 19. It has no mag size. It's terrible. Don't run the 1911. Next up is the 357, aka the old Magnums. Used to be snake shots. Used to be super good. Now they're just pointless. There's no like use for them in Warzone. They're D tier. They're just useless in Warzone nowadays. So don't run those. Next up is the Deagle. You can run akimbo Deagles, but they have no like hit reg, so that's pretty bad. But overall, even the single Deagle does really good damage, and you can get a kill with it. I'm gonna put a C tier behind the X16. I'd rather have a akimbo X16 over an akimbo Deagle. Next up is the M19 pistols. As you can see, again, these are super good akimbo, just like the X16s. And definitely better than the 911 and the 357. It's probably better than the X16 actually for akimbo wise. Super good up close. It shreds. If you can really spray these, it can beat people. Like it kills really quick, honestly. So next up is the Ram 7. This gun has an insane time to kill. And if you can control the recoil, there's actually multiple class ups that have no recoil on the gun. It has decent range, time to kill, all that stuff, mobility. It's like an SMG AR with good range. So definitely give that a try. I would still say it's like an A or B tier. But since like the kilo and stuff's an A tier, I'm gonna have to bump it into a very, very, very high. Like it's a high B, very close to A tier assault rifle. Super good gun. Just obviously it's not quite as good as like the M4, the kilo, or the FL, you know what I'm saying? So definitely a B tier assault rifle. But as you guys know, like don't get too frustrated about that because it is a very, very high up B tier gun, like super close to A tier. Next up is the Holger. This gun sucks. It's just probably one of the worst LMGs in the game. It's not terrible, like you can get kills with it, but it like you have to make it into like an AR, which is a 30 mag, and like it's If you don't, then it's super slow. It doesn't do a ton of damage, kind of a pea shooter. So I'd rather have it over the MG34. I'll say that, and the FAMAS. So I'll put it right there in C tier. Next up is the crossbow. I'm not even gonna talk too long about that. If you're running a crossbow in Warzone, please explain to me why. Next up is the Striker 45. I'm going low C tier, okay? Like real quick. Like I'll put it above the pistols and stuff. It's better. It's right behind the Uzi. I'd rather have an Uzi, but the Striker 45 doesn't do too much damage. I used to drop videos on this gun super early Warzone. It's not terrible, but nowadays you're gonna get absolutely gunned by a MAC 10, MP5, honestly any top tier, MP7, Cold War MP5, anything really, AK-74U, Bullfrog, all that stuff, all better than the Striker 45, so do not run that. Next up is the Grau 556. This gun has been really hitting different recently. I'll say that right now. Like recently this gun has had no recoil. It feels like it's back to its form, you know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna put it, I'm kind of thinking A tier low key, like it's almost back there. Like I'd rather have it over a Ram. So since I'd rather have it over a Ram, and a Ram is super high B tier, I'm putting it like low A tier, you know what I'm saying? I think I'd still rather have the Kilo, but it's definitely up there. It's above the Ram, so it has to go A tier. It's kind of ridiculous again, so definitely give that a try if you have not recently. Next up is the VLK Rogue shotgun. As you guys know, I dropped a video on this not too long ago. It's like the power washer gun, people called it, with the long suppressor and Dragon's Breath. This gun is ridiculous. Actually, up close, if you headshot him, it completely one-shots him, full armor and everything up close. But I'd rather have an R9 Origin, all that stuff. I'd probably rather have it over, I don't know, it might be a C tier type shotgun. It might be a C tier or a B tier. I'm gonna put it very high C tier, okay? It's actually pretty decent. It's not too bad, but it's not the best shotgun in the game. And you have to get super lucky to get it one shot. So not terrible, but just not viable. Next up is the Renetti pistol. As you guys know, this thing used to be one of the top guns in the game. The Akimbo Renettis, the burst pistols, were ridiculous. Like up close, they would just shred you. But they definitely got nerfed. They're not as good anymore. There is a replacement in Cold War called the Diamatis, but these guns aren't very good anymore. It's probably still better than all these pistols. But Akimbo wise, I'd rather have the M19. So I'm gonna put it C tier behind the M19, because the M19 Akimbo shreds, and the Renetti you would probably get gunned by an M19 up close. Next up is the SKS. This gun is not viable. I see people say it's like decent. There's so many guns better than it, so I'm gonna put it, I'll put it C tier. I'll put it above the FAMAS even, but it's not as good as other guns. Like it's just not viable. It's not one of the top guns in the game. It's not something you should be running, you know what I'm saying? Next up is the Bruin. This gun is different. I just dropped a video on it too. This gun has been going crazy recently. Good enough for B tier, I think. I'd rather have it, I'm gonna put it right behind the Ram. Like I'm telling you, this gun has really been going crazy again recently. It's pretty good, no recoil, good damage, all that stuff. I wouldn't say it's back to its meta form, because when it was meta, like it was broken, but it was definitely hitting again. So give that a try if you have not tried it again recently. Next up is the CR56 AMAX assault rifle. As you guys know, this is the gun right now. This is the best AR in the game. I'm putting this S tier. It is the best option at assault rifle. It's better than the Grau, Kilo, all that stuff, and it's still super good. Very good. Ton of damage. All you have to do is control the recoil, but overall it is the best assault rifle, like I said, so definitely run that if you have not already. Next up is the Fennec. This gun has been going crazy recently. It's more of a solo type SMG, but the damage it puts out, the fire rate, I wish it had a little bit bigger of a mag size just for how fast you go through the bullets, but it absolutely shreds. And like I said, it's more of a solo gun. I'm gonna put it B tier, right above the shotguns, because up close this thing will destroy you, but it's just not built for quads and stuff, just for how fast you go through that ammo. You could put sleight of hand and make it more viable, but it's definitely a B tier type gun. Next up is the Finn LMG. It does not compete with the PKM or Bruin, so I'm gonna have to put it behind the Bruin. I do believe it's better than the M91 SA87, so I'm gonna put it right behind the Bruin, but just know there's a little gap between that and the Bruin. The Bruin's slightly better. The Finn does shred. There's some class ups with the Finn that go absolutely crazy, and you could go crazy with it, but it's not quite as good as the Bruin. It's a B tier type LMG right behind it. Next up is the XM4. We're finally getting into the Cold War guns. This assault rifle shoots peas. Like it does really no damage. It's not gonna compete with the AMAX, not even the M13, honestly. Like I'll just be straight. I'd rather have an M13, but it does decent. So I'm gonna put it behind the Fennec right here. It's a B tier assault rifle. Next up is the Krig 6. I like to say this is the Cold War Kilo. I believe this is better than the XM4 and better than the M13. I'm gonna put it up here, right above the AX50, behind the Bruin and Finn. It's pretty decent. It's pretty decent. Some builds with it are pretty solid. The only thing is most Cold War guns have a very weird recoil sway, where they go like left, right. So that makes it a little harder to control, and why I'd rather have a Kilo or M4 or all that stuff, the Grau, AMAX. So it's a B tier assault rifle right behind the Ram and all that stuff, but it's pretty solid. Next up is the Cold War MP5. This gun is ridiculous. It has very strong recoil, but it does a ton of damage up close. It just shreds. I personally like the Modern Warfare MP5 more and the MAC 10, so I'm gonna have to probably put it A tier. It could be S tier in some people's eyes, but I'm gonna put it very, very high A tier, right behind my M4 right there. It's pretty good. It competes with all the SMGs, but again, I'd rather have the MAC-10 and MP5 from Modern Warfare over it, so it's an A tier SMG. Next up is the Cold War AK. This gun is ridiculous. If you guys didn't know, I just dropped a video on this not too long ago. It's very, very controllable. Recoil pattern makes it very usable. Like, it does good damage, great controllable recoil, mobility, all that stuff. It's very good. It's better than the Modern Warfare AK by a landslide. I'm gonna put it right behind this Krig. I'd rather have the Krig, but the AK is right there. I'm telling you, go watch my video. I just dropped on it like a week or two ago. It's really solid. Definitely give that a try. Next up is the Milano. This is literally statistically the worst gun in the game. It is the slowest time to kill in the entire game. It is actually the worst. It's not too bad off the floor loot and super and all that stuff, but actual stats wise, it is the slowest killing gun in the game. So it has to be low. Like, it might be D tier. It might just be D tier. I'm putting it above the MK2 and D tier, just for the fact that it is the slowest time to kill in the entire game. Next up is the 74U. I gave this a try once or twice in Warzone, and that's all I had to do. Like, this gun is not viable. It's not very competitive with all the other SMGs. I'd rather have the Cold War, all that stuff, MP5, Modern Warfare MP5, MAC-10, all that stuff is better than the 74U. I'm gonna put it high C tier because it's decent, but it's just not as good as the other ones. You know what I'm saying? Next up is the M16. Okay, this gun is gonna go super, super, super low A tier, like super close to B. The M16 is pretty solid. I personally like the Cold War AUG a lot more, but this thing has good range, tight bullet spread for the burst, great damage, all that stuff. It's pretty solid. Like, a lot of people love this gun. It's pretty dirty, so definitely give that a try. But like I said, I do believe the AUG from Cold War is much better. Next up is the Type 63. This thing was ridiculous along with the DMR, but they both got nerfed. The Type 63 has a ton of recoil jump into it, and it's not nearly as good as the DMR. It is still better than most guns in the game, so I'm gonna put it very, very, very low B tier, close to C tier. It just doesn't compete with all those other guns, but I would rather have it over this Modern Warfare AK, the Holger, all that stuff. So it's definitely a low B tier type gun. Next up is the RPD, one of, if not the best floor loot weapons in the game, next to the FFAR. This has to be a high B tier type gun. I'm putting it over the Fin. I'm putting it over the Fin. You know what I'm saying? I've tried it with class ups a few times. It's not quite as good as the Bruin, but this gun kind of shreds damage wise, recoil wise. It's pretty solid. Definitely give that a try if you have not already. Next up is the Tundra. So this is one of the guns I have not tried too much. So this is one of the guns you guys have to help me out with in the comments. If I put it in the wrong spot, let me know. But I have not tried it too much. I have seen clips about it being hit scan. It has no recoil to it. It has great range. Just out of like purely not knowing, I'll put it B tier. But you, like I said, let me know down in the comments below where you would put it. I have no clue how it compares to HDR. I haven't tried it too much. Like I said, let me know in the comments below, where'd you put that? Next up is the Stoner 63. I don't think it's quite as good as the RPD, Bruin, all that stuff. So I'm gonna put it in B tier. I have used this a lot. I've dropped multiple videos on it. It's pretty good. There's a few glitched barrels on it that make the bullet velocity insane. So it is actually as good as the RPD and stuff. So I'll put it right with the RPD, literally right next to it, because it's pretty solid. You can definitely run it compared to it. But it's not meta or anything, so give it a try if you haven't already. Next up is the Pellington. Off floor loot, this thing has the worst bullet drop I've ever seen in my life, but there's one class up you can do. I saw it from JGod and some TikTokers, all that stuff. There's a scope that doesn't have any sniper glint, and there's a barrel that makes it have insane bullet velocity and like no bullet drop. This gun, like, the more and more attachments you get for the Pellington, the better and better it gets. It's really, really good maxed out. I have a few clips with it. It goes insane. In my opinion, it's better than the AX50 for sure. I'm gonna have to put it high B tier, like right here. Like, you guys might not understand that if you have not tried it with a full class setup, but fully loaded out, it's actually really good. So definitely give that a try. Try to level that up, all that. We have the Cold War 1911, just as bad as the Modern Warfare 1911. Not even gonna talk too much about it. It's terrible. Next up is the Diamatti pistols. Like I told you guys not too long ago, these things are replacing the Renettis. The Renettis were the burst pistol, ridiculous. Now these things are dirty. They tried to nerf the Diamattis, they didn't. They're still so good up close. They're ridiculous. These have to be A tier. Next up is the Hauer shotgun. This is a 1-2 shot kill with a slow pump. It's really only viable if you have really good movement. You know what I'm saying? So if you have really good movement, it's up there because you can make it work. But if you're going into a building with this and you're like, not great with movement, like a lower, skilled player, and someone's in the attic, with a MAC-10, you're getting absolutely dropped. It's that simple. So I'm gonna put it low B tier. It's not as good as the other shotguns, you know what I'm saying? So, but it's decent. Next up is the Gallo shotgun. This gun is pretty good. Up close, it's actually really good. It's better than the Hauer. It definitely competes with these shotguns. I'm gonna put it right behind the R9 here. Up close, it's actually ridiculous, but it just doesn't compete with the meta currently. And out of all the shotguns, it's probably, like I said, right behind the R9 here in the B tier. Next up is the KSP. Okay, this is another gun I really haven't tried. next to the Tundra. These are the two guns that I really have not put much time into. I haven't leveled them up, but I have seen clips with the KSP. I've seen that's not very good. Probably taking a 74U over it from what I've seen. But again, in the comments below, let me know what you guys think of where I'm putting it. I'm putting it right behind the 74U, okay? Just because I really don't know. So in the comments below, let me know where you would put it on the tier list. Next up is the Cold War Magnums. I've seen these go crazy, like OG snake shots, but like I said, I've tried them. They're not even as good as the Akimbo M19s, so I'm putting them right low C tier. Next up is the M82 Barrett 50 cal. I've seen some wild clips with this. There's a scope that has no sniper glint. People have hit shots like 600 meters out. Like, it's ridiculous. This gun is actually kind of nasty. But I'd rather have a loaded out Pellington. I don't know if the Tundra's better. I'm just gonna put it in mid B tier because I'm slightly unsure compared to the Tundra. But I'd rather have a Pellington over it. But it's decent. It's decent. Next up is the M60 LMG. This is another gun I have not put too much time into, but I know for a fact it doesn't compete with the top LMGs like the PKM, Bruin, RPD, Stoner. So I'm gonna put it very, very, very high C tier, okay? Because the damage it outputs is kind of wild. It kills pretty quick, but the mobility, ADS speed, reload time, everything is so slow. Like, it's so terrible. So do not run this gun in Warzone. You're just not gonna be able to compete with other guns because of how slow you're gonna be. Next up is the DMR. This is S tier. It's still ridiculous. They've nerfed it twice, almost 3 times, and it's still wild. If you can control the recoil nowadays in the updates, the DMR is still ridiculous. Next up is the Cold War AUG. This gun is S tier. With the right build, this thing can 1 burst at close to medium range. Even at long range, it can 2-3 bursts. It's really, really good. Like I said earlier, it's better than the M16. So it has to be S tier. It's very good. So definitely give it a try. I have a few videos on it up already. So definitely give those class ups a try. Next up is the Bullfrog. I've seen some wild clips. I'm going to put this in very, very high B tier. Next up is the FFAR. It's an S tier gun. If you guys were in my stream yesterday, I was running a tournament. This paired with the Kar 98, it just is insane. Like, with the Raider stock, your movement speed is up like 50 to 100%. It's absolutely ridiculous. This gun is wild. If you guys need a class setup for it, I have dropped a few videos in the past. Definitely go check those out, and I'm probably going to drop one in the future again soon because this gun is so fun to run. Next up is the MAC 10 S tier again. I'm going to bump it up there. It is the best SMG in Warzone right now, right next to MP5 from Modern Warfare. This thing is wild. You can literally run any class up on it and it's still good. Like, you can run the ugliest, worst class up you can for it and it still be the top SMG in the game. It's absolutely ridiculous. Has infinite range. It feels like great damage, no recoil, all that stuff. Very good. Shreds people apart. I believe this is the SPR. Very, very, very good sniper. It's almost hit scan, great bullet velocity. I'd rather have a Kar 98 and HDR, so I'm gonna put it very high B tier because, like I said, HDR and Kar 98 in my opinion are better, but it's still super, super, super good with the right class setup. Next up is the A94. This is complete dog. This is going C tier. Like, it just does no damage. It does literally no damage. It's not a top AR in the game at all. If you're running this, you're probably gonna get gunned. Please do not run it in Warzone. The tier list is getting way too big now. But next up is the Rytec. I believe I've literally never used this gun in Warzone, and I don't even have to know this gun is not very good. It's not compared to any of the snipers. You guys can't even really see this S tier anymore. This tier list is getting way too much. There's too many guns in the game. But the Rytec, it doesn't compete with the M82, doesn't compete with the Pellington. It's not good. It has explosive rounds, but overall bullet velocity, all that stuff is terrible. It's gonna go high C tier because I just know it's not competitive. It's not one of the top snipers in the game. There's so many snipers I'd rather have over it, so don't run that in Warzone. Next up is the AS Val. This is literally ranked #1 for time to kill in the entire game at close to medium, and #2 for long range. Very, very good gun. So it's gonna go very, very, very high B tier, close to A, just for that time to kill. It's absolutely ridiculous how fast you kill someone in this game with it. But again, it's high B tier. Next up is the Street Sweeper. I literally have not put any time. I don't even think I have this unlocked, just because, like, I just haven't, you know what I'm saying? So I literally have no idea about this gun. I have seen clips about it shredding, but I've also seen clips about it taking 3.5 years to reload. Again, I'm going to put it right next to the Tundra. You guys go in the comments. Let me know where you would put it. Next up is the ISO SMG. This gun is literally so terrible. I'm putting it right next to the Milano. There's no reason to run it in Warzone. There is zero reason to run it in Warzone, okay? No point at all. But that is the tier list for the Cold War Warzone. All the weapons in the game update. Definitely let me know if you guys would change anything about it in the comment section below. Like I said, there's a few guns I haven't put too much time into, so they're in iffy spots, you know what I'm saying? Real quick, looking back onto it, I'm going to bump the Howard below the 74. You guys are probably going to get upset about that. I'm going to put it down here. But again, let me know what you guys would change about it. Just know this is opinion based. Don't get too upset about it. Like, the list, is coming from more of a competitive side. Like I said, let me know if you would change anything. This is the full tier list. Let me know what you guys think of it down below. That was it. Like, all the guns updated. I'm looking forward to more future updates. I'll keep running these, or in any updates, I'll drop you guys another one. But like I said, let me know if you change anything, and that is the tier list.